So tell me about the vegan component. How did that come in?
Well, you know, so I just want to be clear that I can make a lot of arguments about why one might embrace a vegan diet for ethical reasons,
Yeah.
for environmental reasons, for economic reasons. But I think in terms of health reasons, it would be irresponsible for me, and
Hmm.
I think anyone to say that everyone should have a vegan diet. I think there's so many factors that go into what is the best diet for each of us individually, that to have any kind of blanket, you know, panacea of this is the best diet and you should follow the script accordingly. I think it's dangerous. I think people need to check in with their physicians or their whatever healers they're working with to
Hmm.
determine that, and just mostly check in with themselves. But there is this growing body of research that is clear that plant-centered diets are very effective in helping to prevent many chronic illnesses, and many cases ameliorate symptoms, in some cases reversing some chronic
Yeah.
illnesses. And so I've always seen the kind of presentation of vegan diets as um, this tool for addressing this public health crisis, especially in the most impacted communities. And part of the reason that so much of my focus, the emphasis of my work, has been on food,
Hmm.
um, you know, African American cuisine, or kind of more broadly, food from the African diaspora,
Yeah.
is because of the impact that industrial food has had on many of these communities. And understanding that, for me, I think one of the criteria we should think about when eating healthfully is what are our ancestral foods? How can we connect with our cultural foodways?
Hmm.
And so helping African Americans understand, when you kind of peel away the layers of these negative ways in which African American cuisine is often vilified. When people talk about soul food, they're
Yeah. Yeah.
often talking about the comfort foods of the cuisine, or they're talking about the kind of antebellum survival foods that you might see in some parts of the South. But it's certainly, the institution of slavery is more complicated than that. It wasn't so paternalistic in parts of the Louisiana, the coastal Carolinas, the Caribbean, but really helping people to understand that the core, the foundational foods of African American cuisine are the type of foods that any Western trained allopathic physician or naturopath or dietitian would say we all should be eating.
Hmm.
Nutrient rich foods like collards and mustards and turnips and kale and dandelion and sugar sap peas and pole beans and black eyed peas. I mean, these are really helpful
Yeah.
foods that are at the core of African American cuisine. And so I just want people getting, I want to get people eating real food again. That's
Yeah.
been a major emphasis of mine. And it's tricky because my books are published by these major corporations, and they feel like they need to market them certain ways
Sure.
to help people kind of get a grasp of what they're about. But vegan is a part of it.
Hmm.
But I also have wanted people to understand that it's the big emphasis for me as well has been about getting people making food from scratch, eating real food, and kind of
Hmm.
abandoning this industrial process convenient food that so many of us have been relying upon over the past several decades.
Right.
And it's been great. I think it's been a real powerful process of helping people remember,
Hmm.
because when I go out and do public speaking, I talk at colleges and
Yeah. Yeah.
conferences and community events. When I jog people's memory and ask them if they had, you know, home gardens when they were growing up, or if their families owned farms, or how many of them, had family members who canned and pickled and preserved and did all these things that are often framed as these kind of new hip cool things that young people living in hip cool cities do.
Yeah.
Most people in the audience connect with those things, and so I just think it's really about helping people understand this is nothing new. It's just about kind of getting back to some of those ways that have sustained us well before our food system was
Hmm.
industrialized.
So for you, it's an ethical argument, but there's also health considerations and even cultural things. Like this is a way of reappropriating some important stuff that's been lost.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And it's all those things. I don't want to
Hmm.
in any way devalue the whole conversation around ethics. That's
Yeah.
very important to me, and it's something that personally I'm driven to, get people thinking more about. How do our choices as consumers impact other animals?
Yeah.
What role do we have in like the kind of violent, horrible way in which a lot of animals are treated in factory farming?
Yeah.
But it's tricky because with African Americans, with a lot of American eaters, there's this perception that those who are kind of advocating for more plant-based diets are like the kind of finger-wagging nannies,
Yeah.
the diet police, the people who
Hmm.
are there to harangue you and tell you how wrong you are.
Yeah.
And so I've always tried to figure out a way to, you know, toe that line where I want people to feel comfortable. I don't want to trigger people and push them away. And so it's it's been very intentional, me often not leading with the issue around ethics,
I
because
see. Yeah.
I know the perception that people have when they hear animal rights or, you
Yeah.
know, veganism. And so I'm still trying to figure out ways in which to skillfully do that.